So today's player profile episode, we've done a handful of these now. Gary Payton II, a staple of our rotation. Uh, we acquired him in 2021, and he has proven to be a valuable rotation piece for what we do on both sides of the ball. We got Jim Parkin here, who is one of the better people at kind of highlighting and noting Gary Payton's strengths, and he can speak a lot on what he does well and the value that he adds to the Warriors. So I'm happy to have him and everybody else. And without further ado, let's talk about GP2. So from just the stats breakdown, just pure raw numbers as we always do. Last season, in 22 games, he was obviously hurt for a chunk of the season, a significant chunk. He averaged about 4.5 points, 3 rebounds, about an assist and a half on 59, 50, 86 splits. Obviously, the volume isn't as high as you'd hope because, of injury and the fact that he's not necessarily a high volume player to begin with. But that injury did derail his regular season overall. But in the playoffs, in 12 games, in 16 minutes, he averaged about 7 points, 4 rebounds, and assist on 67, 27, 67 splits. So, obviously, he improved. He was able to rise in the playoffs and perform better from a production and efficiency standpoint, particularly from the field. And especially those rebounding numbers, you could see the bump up there, and then obviously the overall points per game. So he kind of looked closer to his previous self in 2022 in last year's playoffs, and we'll kind of get to that a little bit more. But some of his strengths that I listed out is that, the biggest one, he's an elite on-ball defender at point of attack. Jim, you want to kind of expand on that overall, just kind of what you see from him and what makes him so great at that particular item?
It's interesting to look at it in this format and just looking at his stats, because nobody's going to look at these stats and be like, oh my gosh, Gary Payton is so dominant, like you need him on your team, because people love to look at the stats and judge a player based on that. And they'll never be able to know how great this guy is without actually watching him play, right? And I mean, POA, he's just literally a lockdown defender. There's just so many things that he can do. One of the things that he can do so well is just he understands the timing of the dribble. So he's chasing a guy from before the half court line, and he just times it so well that he knows exactly when to swipe at it without getting called for a foul. And every time he swipes at it, it's like the guy that he's guarding loses the dribble, and it just gets to a point where the guy that he's guarding, which is oftentimes the other team's best ball handler, is scared to dribble in front of him. I'm going to say that this was maybe a little bit less so last year because he wasn't the same last year. He was coming off of an injury. He just wasn't ever his true self. It looked like he lost weight. It looked like he lost muscle. It looked like he lost strength. It looked like his athleticism was not what it was a year before. So and even then he's better than most at this. But yeah, I mean,
No, 100%. And what you highlighted, the anticipation, right? Just putting his body in a position with a low stance, bending his knees, sliding with the offensive player, sticking with him, paired with his ability to position himself, and ultimately his timing, right? His timing of understanding when to swipe, when to contest, his understanding the release point of the offensive player so as to blow by him and not foul him. His discipline, and like I said, like you said as well and outlined, his ability to anticipate, position himself, and time, whether it means going for a steal or just simply getting a stop for a closeout, contest, in single coverage. GP2's ability to defend on the ball is within the, elite category of the NBA. Whether you want to pick guys like OG Anunoby or, Wiggins is in the mix, but GP2 is in that conversation. Even at the smaller frame at 6'2", he belongs in that discussion because of his ability to kind of, leverage his gifts from an athleticism standpoint, but also pair it with his instincts and his ability to kind of position himself in advantageous situations against opposition. And then offensively, off ball cutting, particularly ghost cuts on the baseline. So when there's kind of primary actions going on the strong side, right, you got, a split action. You have GP2 always in secondary actions, just cutting off the ball baseline, uh, also known as a ghost cut. And he does a really good job of timing those as well, catching the defense off guard, putting them off balance, and finding ways to be efficient in pockets and spots. And these possessions are invaluable because they're free 2 points, and we really didn't have to work too hard for it, right? Like having guys out there that know what to look for, understand his strengths and his skill set. Guys like Draymond, a couple of years ago, Otto Porter, Bielitsa, um, and then even this season, you have Steph being able to find him, especially in transition. GP2's uncanny ability to kind of understand and read the defense so as to take advantage of it through his ability to cut is something that's produces highly efficient offensive production. And that's why even though his overall raw numbers and his averages aren't necessarily high, his ability to be efficient. You look at those percentages, 59% from the field in the regular season, 67% from the field in the playoffs. He's so efficient with these possessions because he knows how to play off the ball as a slasher. Jim, do you have any other notes on that?
Yeah, so well, it looks like you have a separate section for him for physical attributes. So,
Oh yeah,
I mean, some
you can pair that as well. That's fine.
okay, so something that is really helpful to him is his strength. He's incredibly strong for somebody his size. The first time I recognized him was actually in a preseason game. I think it's the only preseason game that he played 2 seasons ago. When I think that's the game where they decided to pick him instead of Avery Bradley. And what caught my attention when he got into the game was they were going up against the Lakers, and he was guarding LeBron James near the nail, and so LeBron had his back turned to him kind of, and Gary Payton just kind of bottled him up. LeBron couldn't do anything, and I was just kind of blown away by how strong Gary Payton was. He's so much smaller than a guy like LeBron, but he was just kind of manhandling him in there. And I was just like, wow, I kind of had my sights set on Avery Bradley, but this guy, this guy deserves a shot. We didn't really get to watch him in the preseason up until that moment, but just that alone made me really curious about what he might be able to do. And he's proven that. He in the playoffs, it didn't really matter who he was guarding. He could, if it was a speedy guy, he could stay in front of that guy, like Ja Morant, right? If it was like a stronger or bigger guy, like maybe a Jaylen Brown or a Jason Tatum, it still didn't matter. He was still stripping them. He was still making them super uncomfortable, and he was just locking people down. And so this is an uncommon ability in the NBA nowadays. There's not like a ton of elite POA guys where they're just shutting you down. And just a guy like Devin Booker, for example, he's a real threat offensively, but you put Gary Payton, a full version of Gary Payton on him, and he just shut him down, man. This is just a unique ability that he has, and he's always 100%. Defensively, he never takes a possession off, and he doesn't take it easy, man. He's all out every time. And so for a guy like that to be available to the Warriors, I mean, it's truly a gift. I'm just it's a blessing to have him back on the roster.
100%, 100%. I love how you outlined specific possessions that highlighted his strengths. Another one of which he's a capable shooter, right? He's a guard, but he's a guy that while he isn't in the high 30s or low 40s consistently on higher volume, he can still knock shots down when he's open. We've seen that in the playoffs in particular, where teams will kind of play off of him, let him shoot, give him that shot, and he'll make them pay from the corners in particular. So for his career, shoots about 36% from three. Or sorry, for his career, he's about 34% from three. But his best season shooting the ball was in 21-22 at 36%. And that's on, I'm combining volume and efficiency, right? So even though last year he shot 50% overall in 22 games, I'm considering the fact that it was on lower efficiency. In 21-22, that was by far his best shooting year when you combine efficiency, volume, shot 36% on about 2 attempts, which teams left him open and he made them pay at a very respectable clip. So yeah, that's something that, when you look at the fact that like someone like Draymond, teams will leave him open and he's not a willing shooter. And if even when he does shoot the ball, it's going to be in the high 20s, right? GP2 is a guy that he is a willing shooter, and because he works on his shot, he is someone that puts the work ethic behind that. But on top of it, he shoots in the mid 30s. So his percentages are definitely among the league average, and his attempts are enough to where he can make the defense pay consistently. Um, no, by no means, like I said, he's not an elite shooter, but again, capable. He definitely is capable, and that's just another wrinkle to his game that provides a lot of value. Because if he wasn't able to shoot from the outside, it would kind of limit his court time and his ability to make the defense pay. But because he is capable of just attempting and knocking shots down at a respectable clip, and we saw it against Boston, right? We saw it against the Lakers at times, right? So, and I'm talking about the playoffs the last few seasons. He's just proven to have that ability in his repertoire.
Well, what about last year? He shot 50% from threes in 22 games that he did play last year.
That is true.
50%. That's
That is
not a
true.
small sample size, right? So I think that the team could put a little more trust in him to take and make these wide open shots that other teams give up. They just allow him to shoot it, and he shot it with like unbelievable confidence last year. Unfortunately, it didn't translate as much in the playoffs because I think just everything about what happened in the playoffs was just inconsistent. The type of offense they were running, how much he played versus some of the games where he just didn't even see playing time. Like what was it, Game 4, where Kerr decided to play Moody instead of him, and so yeah, so I just think he needs more of an opportunity. I really like the form on his shot. I think, again, 50 shots, 50% from the threes. That's no joke. Even if it's not, a big, what is it? The number of attempts is not a lot. He ended up,
Right?
yeah, he ended up making like half a 0.5 threes per game. But I mean, you could shoot like that and still be an impact on the floor. When you look back to, let's say, Game 5 against the Nuggets, that one really sticks out because
That's true.
a closeout game, and he had 3 threes in that game, including one with a minute left in the game, where there's like no time left on the shot clock. It was a scramble situation. The Warriors are leading by 2 points with 1 minute left in the game, and he hits the 3, and they end up getting a 5-point lead there. And that's the kind of cushion that a guy like him can provide, that assures a victory rather than missing that shot and then, allowing the Nuggets a chance to either tie the game or worse.
Absolutely. And to kind of expand on your point, a larger sample size, on corner threes for his career, he shoots 40% flat in the regular season. And in the playoffs for his career, he shoots 47% on corner threes. And that is a combined 24 games in the playoffs for his career. So he is, while he may not be an elite three-point shooter, he's capable. That's kind of the descriptor I would use. He is an elite corner three-point shooter. He's elite at knocking shots down in the corner at a high clip when you combine volume and efficiency. So no doubt.
Dre, it adds a dimension to his game that other elite POA guys in the past have not had. You think of a guy like Tony Allen, for example. The guy, like, you just leave him wide open. And that was actually a key plan. A key plan that the Warriors had against him when they faced the Grizzlies back in 2015. Because Tony Allen was really hurting them. But you left him wide open, allowed like Andrew Bogut to guard him, and the guy was just, he didn't know what to do. He tries to jump out of the gym and all of his shots, and And I'm just using Tony Allen as one example, but there are a lot of guys that are great at defense, but can't really give you a whole lot offensively.
Josh Okogie is another example of that, right?
Sure.
Even
So
though
I
he's
was
not
literally
like
going to say that.
even though he's not on the level of POA that GP2 or Tony Allen is, just from a conceptual standpoint, he's a guy that can defend, point of attack, but he can't make you pay offensively, whether it be shooting the ball from that standpoint or in other ways. But no, you're right. And that was a key adjustment in that Memphis series that you outlined. That's something that, even though teams are going to leave GP2 open, he will make them pay. And like we've seen in the past 2 playoff runs, he did so at a 47% clip in the corners, like on corner 3. So for sure, definitely something that he's going to continue to work on and refine as his career goes on, because we have him under contract another 2 seasons. Okay. The next thing I want to highlight is how active he is on the boards. At 6'2", he is very active on the boards. Makes a conscious effort to, sky for rebounds. Really, especially on offensive rebounds for his career, he averages exactly about 0.8, so about 1 offensive rebound for his career. And in the last 2 seasons with the Warriors, he's actually averaged exactly 1 offensive rebound in each season. So he is someone that, has boxes out, does the right things. He's a positive on the court for multiple reasons. One of which is the fact that he's a proactive rebounder, right? Averages the last 2 seasons on the Warriors, 3.5 rebounds and 3.1 rebounds. So he's giving you a tick over 3 rebounds, and that's only in 17 minutes of play. So his rebounding numbers are very impressive for someone of his stature. And at that guard spot, like, he gives you a tremendous value. Even in the finals, he averaged a number of rebounds as well. So that's something, Jim, you want to speak on that a little bit more with the rebounding?
Well, okay. So in terms of his rebounding, I mean, if you extrapolate to per 36, he's close to 7 rebounds per game, which is pretty amazing for somebody, at his height, 6'2". And I remember looking at his G League stats probably a couple of years back, and I'm pretty sure the guy was averaging like damn near 9 rebounds per game in the G League. So he's more than capable of rebounding, for sure. He's Mr. Intangibles. Like, the guy is a literal superstar in his role. All the things that is asked of him, he does. And, he's just such a team player. He's just completely selfless. He doesn't, he's not looking for his own ever, or doing something on the floor that isn't conducive to team success. And, he doesn't take ill-advised shots, like, ever. And he doesn't ever complain if he gets no shots in a game. And he doesn't complain if he doesn't get on the floor because Kerr is an idiot. He's just pure intensity and just pure good vibes on the bench. Just, he's just an amazing presence all around. You
100%.
can't ask for a better role player.
Absolutely. Speaking of
Andre, can I add just something to that real quick?
100%. Go ahead.
Something that I really love about GP2 and kind of encompasses everything that Jim said. I feel like he's the type of guy that, there are guys that bring energy to the floor just with rebounding, dunking, transition, big buckets, defense, making a steal in a key situation. Like, I feel like he's the guy that when you go on a run, he's one of the main reasons why, because he's getting a steal, he's getting a rebound, he's pushing the floor, he's in transition. And like, those are that's one of the things that I love about GP2 is I feel like he's always doing something positive and building momentum and not a momentum killer on the court. So those are just like 2 things along with what Jim said with the intangibles. Like, I just feel like he's a momentum bringer to the court and not a momentum killer, and he brings the energy which we need when we're going on runs. You know what I mean?
That's very true. You look at that 18-2 start 2 years ago when the team was healthy for the most part, and GP2 would come in and he would just change the game. Where the Warriors had some level of momentum because their starters were always, so good and reliable and dependable. And then you rely on the bench to come in and kind of hold a lead, right? But
Yep.
GP2 comes into the game and they expand on the lead because the defense is so dominant, and there's just no opportunity for the opposition to get going when your defense is that good and when you have pieces like this coming into the game. So absolutely.
Yeah, Jim,
And
and
think
I
about the
remember, right?
finals. Think about the finals last year. When we were going on runs, who was on the court?
GP2.
GP2.
Yep.
So
And
he's the
during the
guy that you
title
want out
season,
there. He's the guy that you
during the
want out
title,
there.
yeah,
Sorry,
during
go
the
ahead.
title
Go ahead.
season. No, I was just gonna say during the title season, right? I remember like when we started 18-2, whenever he would go on the floor, Chris Mullen and like just like all the different people would be tweeting and talking on the broadcast saying how he would like get a steal and literally that almost always happened. Like as soon as he got in the game, he would always get a steal and I think that just fuels the offense because he's giving you more possession. So yeah, I agree.
What I like to call, I kind of coined this phrase, maybe not, but to my knowledge, this is something I kind of came up with. He's a walking positive. Like anything and everything he does for the minutes that he plays in will be a plus. Whether it's defending the opponent's best player on the perimeter, whether it's anticipating a steal, trying to grab a rebound, or cutting in the paint for an efficient 2 points, or even leaking out in transition to get an easy an easy basket there. Like he's always at the heart of, like Kevin said beautifully, like this momentum building kind of run that the Warriors have always been so elite at creating, right? So he's one of the main catalysts for these major runs that we like to make. And like all of you guys kind of referenced, that when we went 18-2, he was one of the standout reasons why we did. Like we would kind of put.
And Andre, we
Yeah.
talked about how this year we need to get the good vibes back. This dude is like the glue to having good vibes, and let me tell you why. Because think about this: when Steph pokes the ball away and he gets a steal and he throws it to Draymond, and now we have a 4-on-3 or a 3-on-2 going the other way, and GP2 goes up for an emphatic alley-oop, the stadium goes crazy. Steph is feeling it. Everybody's feeling it. So not only is like that's what I mean when he brings the energy. Like he brings the energy to the stadium, he brings the energy to the team, and like he's what we need in order to keep the good vibes going. Like he's one of those glue, one of those people that are one of those players that's the glue to the good vibes. If that makes sense.
You're
In
exactly
a broader perspective.
Just to add to that, there's a level of power to his dunks on the transition plays where, like you said, it just brings so much energy to the crowd and to the team. Yeah, it's just like Wiggins and Kuminga. Obviously, they can jump out of the gym and dunk at will, right? But the way GP goes up and the way he dunks it, there's just more oomph to it, if you know what I mean. There's just so much more power behind it, and it's just so much more exciting. And he's
it's usually an
posterizing
alley-oop.
guys.
Yeah, Jim, exactly. It's usually an alley-oop or a poster. Like, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, the guy is dunking on somebody with regularity. We didn't see him. Unfortunately, we didn't see a lot of that last year. Obviously, again, due to him not being 100%. But I expect that GP to be back.
100% agree. Appreciate all of those contributions. So the next thing that I kind of added was that he's a vertical threat, right? Especially in transition. So like you guys kind of referenced back in 22, we would kind of get a lot of stops, string together multiple stops, and go on a run. And his ability to be a threat in transition, whether it be a lob threat or somebody that can kind of catch the ball in the half court and finish over the top of bigs. He has that ability to kind of play with some speed and also play with some pop, play with some bounce. So he's definitely a vertical threat, and even though he kind of lost some of that last year due to injury, that's something that we're hoping that he can get back to next season, because that's definitely one of his major strengths is his ability to finish above the rim, especially whether, like I said, transition or half court situation. So, and then the next thing, and we kind of highlighted this throughout, but his physical attributes are all positives, right? His elite bounce, like I mentioned before, he's a vertical threat. A lot of that reason is because he can jump out of the gym. His explosive quickness, that has to do a lot with his ability to defend at the point of attack, slide his feet, stick with the opposition, and as well as great hands, right? He just has big, strong hands that are able to poke the ball out of the opposition's hands. Very active, right, in the passing lanes and on the ball, just being able to strip players with force. So these athletic traits, these gifts, are all kind of add up and accumulate to why he's such a positive impact player on the court, because he's able to do things at his size and at his speed that a lot of players aren't able to do, right? He gave Anthony Davis a lot of trouble, especially under the basket, because of that reason. He was playing so fast in the pick and roll, AD didn't have enough speed to recover to him, right? And then there were opportunities and there were moments where against Boston, he was just stronger than a lot of the players on the court. So he was just kind of getting into the lane and finishing over the top. And Boston didn't really have much of an answer for him, particularly in Game 5. So, does anyone want to expand on these athleticism, these tools or these attributes?
Well, you add all those things that you mentioned. He's got elite quickness and he's got elite speed on top of the explosiveness, the bounce, all of it, right? But the thing that makes him special is his basketball IQ. He utilizes all those abilities and he's able to use it to help the team completely and utterly. There's so many athletes and guys who are just incredible, whether they're fast, quick, whatever, right? There's so many guys like that in the NBA, but it doesn't mean they know how to use it to maximize whatever it is that they can do to help the team. It's just they show it when they go out for a dunk or something. A good example would be like, what's his name? Gerald Green. You guys remember Gerald Green? He's one of the most explosive athletes you'll ever see. The guy, his head is literally over the rim. Most guys, they reach the rim with their heads. This guy's head was his neck was over the fucking rim. This guy was insane. But that's all it was good for. The only things that were good for his athleticism was his ability to jump on his shot and his ability to jump out of the gym when he goes up for a dunk, right? So what a waste of just incredible talent, because you can't focus on other aspects of the game better than just the offensive end. And that's what separates Gary Payton from so many other guys who are deemed super athletic. Kuminga is the perfect example. Look at him. He jumps out of the gym. And, does he completely utilize his ability, his size, his skills, and everything to make sure that he does all the intangibles?
Right. Yeah. And we're going to get to, we're definitely going to touch on Kuminga, and that's a good point at some point. And then I guess the last thing is he's a play finisher, right? And so he doesn't demand the ball in his hands. He's not someone that needs, possessions on the ball and to create. He finishes plays, right? Steph Curry creates them, right? And then next season it's going to be Chris Paul who creates them. And GP2 is somebody who's fully capable of finishing plays out of those advantages that are created from other players, right? He can be efficient in those spots, and he can finish plays at the basket, at the three-point line, in transition, in a myriad of ways. So, yeah, I think that kind of covers that. And actually, for the first time ever, I have a second slide for strengths. I hadn't had it for any other player, but I had to add a second slide for GP. He's an underrated connective passer. I think that's something that gets lost in a lot of this. He does a really good job of understanding, like, when he's in an advantage situation, whether it's a 4-on-3, and he understands, like, just making the right play, swing pass, making the extra pass. Very unselfish, and he's always looking to find guys when he has the ball in his hands as opposed to looking for his own shot. So his connective passing is something that I think gets overlooked because he's so great at other facets of the game, but it's something that's underrated and that must be noted because he does average a little bit over an assist per game, and part of that reason is because he's able in his minutes to be effective on the ball and finding guys, whether it be in the corner or just kickouts down low. He's very sound in his decision making as a passer.
Yeah.
I also mentioned he's multi-positional. He can play multiple positions on the court. He can guard multiple positions on the court, right? So you can pair him next to Steph at that kind of guard spot. maybe not use him as a shooter, of course, but kind of just play him and Steph and then have 3 wings out there. You could also have Steph, Clay, another wing, and then use GP2 as your second wing and have him kind of play the 3 or the 4. And then you can, I mean, obviously we haven't seen too much of it, but kind of play him at that 5 spot. Maybe not in terms of guarding the opposition, but in terms of making the opposition pay offensively, like we saw with Anthony Davis, where he was kind of like this small ball speed 5 who in transition was able to get easy baskets off of leak outs, off of stops, but also in the pick and roll, have that extra burst, have that extra pop and speed against slower bigs so he can get easy layups finishing at the basket in the pick and roll or in advantage situations off the trap. So multi-positional versatility is something that, you know, the Warriors were missing a lot last year, and he's somebody that kind of added some of that back, and hopefully next year that continues as we expect. Jim, you want to expand on the first 2 bullets that I mentioned?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's a great point. I don't know if you heard me ring the bell, but connective passer, completely agreed. He's very quick on the floor when it comes to making decisions. He doesn't just hold the ball, unsure of where the ball needs to go, who he needs to pass it to. Like, none of that. He's a cerebral player. He's not some guy who creates offense, like you said. But in terms of knowing how to find open guys, when he sees them right away, and he makes the quick pass. So completely agreed on that front. And multi-positional, he can guard 3 positions in a very elite manner. 1 through 3. 4s, he can guard some 4s, but obviously, there's a lot of size that he's giving up. So you don't necessarily want him guarding some brute guy down in the post. Although he's at times capable of it. We've seen him block a lot of guys that are much bigger than him. But yeah, I mean, being able to guard 3 positions, that's super elite.
And you make a good point, right? And I will say this. I think he can guard all 5 positions on and off the ball. Meaning, while he may not be able to guard 5s on the ball, he can be a help defender off the ball and help guard 5s in that sense. Where there was a play against the Nuggets where Jokic was kind of in the post, banging down low, and GP2 came out for a weak side block. Like, he's fully capable because of his athleticism and his tools to leverage that and put himself in a position to either steal the ball from bigger players like centers or block a shot at the peak. So we've seen him even as a help defender be able to guard like bigger players. But yeah, no, all great points right there.
Yeah, his timing is incredible, whether it's going up for a block, whether it's going for a steal. Like, he almost never puts his team in jeopardy by gambling for steals. If he's going for a steal, it's because he's read it and he knows exactly where the ball is going and he's off to the races. This is what he does.
Absolutely. As we mentioned before, and we kind of highlighted for this season, but this also applies for last year in 2022. He's clearly shown the ability to be a playoff riser, and that's all we kind of know him for. In the regular season, he's really great at what he does, but he's somebody that's a 16-game player. He takes it another level in the playoffs. He plays even better than his regular season self, his regular season standard. And that's shown in his ability to close lineups, right? He closed that game in against the Nuggets in Game 5. Against Boston, obviously he played some fourth quarter minutes in some big-time lineups and big-time minutes, big-time moments. So he's shown the ability to be a part of that 7 to 8-man rotation, and he can slot in that 5-man lineup to close games and even to start games like he did against Memphis in Game 1, where he was instrumental in that game as well. So just in the playoffs, he's shown the ability to be versatile. He's shown the ability to improve his level of play. I believe his skill set is more suited for the playoffs than the regular season, which is a large part in why we see him just perform better. And like I said, the closing lineups is such a big deal because I do believe he's probably our best option this season going into this year to close games, right? I mean, we have Kevon Looney, we have Dario Saric, Kuminga's still a question mark. But GP2 is really the name that I'm looking at when it comes to crunch time, right? And even Chris Paul, right? But GP2 is the best of both worlds. While Chris Paul is really great offensively, he gives up some ability on the defensive end, While someone like Dario Saric might be really good offensively from a scoring standpoint, spacing standpoint in the front court, he may give up some stuff defensively. While Kuminga might be a pretty solid defensively, point of attack, he gives up some stuff offensively as a spacer, as a guy that can make consistent decisions down the stretch of big playoff games. And so now you look at Kevon Looney. While he's really sound defensively, somebody that can rebound at a high level, he may give up some spacing, some perimeter threat, some extra relief for Steph offensively. GP2 is the greatest mix. He's the greatest blend of high-level offense, high-level defense. And while he's not a perfect offensive player, he gives you enough in his spot with his skill set, and he's such a great defender that he's an automatic positive on the court, and he can close lineups, and he's probably the best option we have going into next season. Jim, you want to kind of expand on that a little bit more if you want?
Well, he's clearly in the rotation, and in terms of closing, we've seen it. We've seen him close games alongside Otto. It was just such a man that 7-man rotation where it's the starters and Otto and GP2 and their ability to close games at various points. Like you could kind of interchange Otto and Gary depending on what you need in certain moments of in the stretch down the stretch of a game in the playoffs, and that he's completely and utterly reliable. The guy has no fear. He knows exactly what he's good at, and he does it to perfection. So you don't have to worry about him screwing up, doing some dumb shit. Like, these are the kinds of players that you need if you want to be an elite team. You need guys off the bench that are just dominant in their roles. You look at a guy like Bruce Brown and what he did for the Nuggets. You need a guy like that. And you need a guy like that to be a part of your rotation if you are going to be a dominant team. That's just the bottom line for me. So he's one of those guys, certainly.
Absolutely. And then I guess the last bullet is kind of like an overarching, kind of all-encompassing descriptor of what GP2 is. And he's somebody that embodies the intangible mindset, right? He's all about the intangibles. He's somebody that plays much bigger than his size. He plays hard. He hustles, dives for loose balls. He gets deflections. He's a pest. He's a disruptor. He picks up 94 feet, tip out rebounds. He's going to do those extra little things to help you win basketball games in the margins. And so that's probably his greatest overall strength. While we can point to his, point of attack ability, which is elite, we can point to his ability to cut off the ball, which is, second to none. His ability to just be a walking positive impact on the court is at the core of it. His ability to just excel at the intangibles, right? His timing, his anticipation, his positioning all go into that, right? And I guess that's kind of where I'm going to conclude his strengths. Jim, do you want to add anything else? Maybe I missed something or...
Yeah, I mean, just the desire, his desire to want to be that player who does the intangible stuff. You have to truly have a strong desire to not want the other team to score at any cost. And he's that guy, man. So I think I'm not sure if you talked about this, but one of the things is I just think that he doesn't really have any weaknesses. You know what I'm saying? There are a lot of guys that are very good at certain things, but then you can expose them because of something about them, whether it's like their size, whether it's they can't shoot, whether these kinds of things. And yet, I mean, he stands at 6'2", but how do you get him off the floor, basically?
Yeah, speaking of weaknesses, actually, I did create a slide for weaknesses, so we can actually get into that.
That's interesting. But hold on. Before you go there,
yeah,
I just want to talk about a couple more positives.
Oh yeah, of course.
From an offensive standpoint, I mean, I guess from both standpoints, when you talk about the pick and roll, right? You talked about him kind of playing a center-like role in a way, and I mean, the play that immediately comes to mind for me when it comes to the pick and roll with Gary Payton is once again that Game 5. He did so much in that Game 5 against the Nuggets 2 years ago to close them out. Because if he didn't play the way he did, I think that game goes to a Game 6. Right? It was a very close game. It was really tough to close that game out. And one of the things again he did was he was the roller. He was on Jokic, and they were playing the high pick and roll. what's his name on the Nuggets, the power forward, Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon was on Steph, and they were playing high pick and roll against Jokic, and Gary Payton was the roller. And he just, when he rolls, like the quickness and how fast he goes, it's like the defense just can't catch up to him. So on that play, he rolled right to the rim. Jeff Green tried to stop him, but Gary Payton got the layup and one. They didn't call the and one, but that was definitely an and one. And so to be able to use him as a guy who finishes on the pick and roll against big guys because they just can't keep up with him, that's an amazing option that you have. And we saw that against the Lakers as well. It was completely underutilized, but when they did utilize it, I think it was game 4, right? I mean, you could argue for at least the first half of that game, Gary Payton was the second best player on the team. That's how good he is. So, and then from a defensive standpoint, him guarding the pick and roll. A lot of guards obviously have trouble guarding the pick and roll, especially smaller guys like Gary, in terms of, being 6'2" and whatever. They just kind of tend to get erased and they're not able to recover back. But that's where Gary is super unique because he goes over the screen most of the time. And then he has to catch up on if the guy, starts attacking going into the paint. And the guy thinks that Gary Payton's gone, but the next thing you know, the guy's trying to take a layup or whatever, the ball handler, and then Gary's right behind him to block the shot. His ability to recover on defensive possessions like that is highly unusual, and not a lot of guys can do that. Again, that's attributable to his athleticism. And, give you an example like Dante DiVincenzo, as cerebral as he's capable of being, he doesn't have the athleticism to recover from, pick and roll plays. So those are the kinds of things where a guy like that can really hurt you. And Gary Payton just, defensively, there's just so many things that he can do. He's just so gifted.
100% agree.
Yeah. Now you can go to the
yeah. So here we go. So the weaknesses and obviously you can push back. So I said the first thing I highlighted was he's an undersized front court player. So in terms of, obviously that's part of his strong suit is that he's a speed 3-4, right? You can play him at the 3, at the 4, and he provides some speed. But on the flip side, he does give up some height and weight at that spot because he's 6'2", 195. So while he does provide some advantages, there are some drawbacks in terms of just his overall size. But he can make up for it in other ways, as we kind of outlined in the previous slides. Offensive limitations, I said he's not really a floor spacer because teams leave him open, right? He's not as respected as guys like Steph or Clay. And that kind of applies to guys like Wiggins and Draymond and Loon. And he's kind of in that tier of teams are content with leaving him open and living with the results. The difference is with him, as opposed to guys like Looney and Draymond, etc., he can actually make defenses pay at a respectable clip. So even though I don't view him as a floor spacer, he shoots as if he is one, right? And so teams will leave him open, but he can still make them pay. The other thing I said is he's not a shot creator, but that's not a particular role we need from him. He just isn't someone that's going to put the ball on the floor and make something happen off the bounce. But he's more so of an off-ball threat, right? That's kind of where his strengths lie. But when he does have the ball in his hands, he's someone that can create for others at times, as we mentioned earlier with his passing. And then the last thing I said, and this honestly was pretty hard to come up with weaknesses because he is a very well-rounded player from a rebounding, playmaking, scoring, shooting, and defensive standpoint. Like, very few boxes he doesn't check. The last thing I mentioned was his health concerns, and that kind of stemmed from last year with the core muscle surgery. And he did lose some strength and explosiveness, as you mentioned previously, Jim. And that's something that we kind of saw him get back to as the year went on, especially in the playoffs. And hopefully next season he can get back to 80 or 90% of what he was in 2022 from a physical standpoint, because he wasn't as healthy as we would have liked him to be. And that's something just to keep on our radar going into next year. But any objections or any amendments that you want to make to this, or do you agree, or what do you think?
I would say being undersized is a factor when you decide to put Gary Payton at power forward. Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to put a 6'2" guy at power forward, but that's what Steve Kerr does, which is why we ask him not to do that, because you're taking away his strengths and you're making him a weaker player than he should be, because you're putting him out of position where he doesn't really belong. So just because he can do power forward like things from an offensive standpoint, it doesn't mean you actually put him at power forward, right? So he may be 6'2". It's funny. I thought the whole time 2 years ago during the run, I thought he was 6'3". I feel like they brought it down a notch. So I was surprised when I saw last year that he was listed as 6'2", because he didn't play like he was 6'2" or 6'3". He was playing. He basically, when he's at full strength, he feels like a 6'6" guy to me. That's what he feels like, because he doesn't. He just holds ground. Like, it doesn't matter. Like what is Devin Booker, like 6'5", 6'6"? Guys
Yeah,
like
he's like
that.
6'6", yeah.
Like, I don't see any size difference when he's on guys like that. So, yeah, it's funny to call him a front court player. I don't consider him a front court player. I just consider him an incredibly unique talent that just happens to be able to do so many things on the floor that you just don't know. You don't know exactly where to put him at times, but certainly not at power forward. That's where I cap his potential at. I don't want him playing a big man's position. That's stupid, right? Keep it within reason.
Right.
This is like putting fucking Alex Caruso at power forward. The fuck?
yeah.
Don't do that. It's stupid, right?
Right.
And in terms of his offensive limitations, being a shot creator, all those things, I mean, he just doesn't need to be doing that at all. He has a specific role, and he's amazing at those roles, at the things that he's asked to do. And it's like, especially now with Chris Paul on your team, why does he ever need to have the ball and create anything? So,
no, 100%. I just wanted to highlight just things that,
things that he does not do.
In general, yeah.
That you would kind of expect from a guy.
Right. Yeah, because even though it's not his role, like, he's not like a shot creator, that's not his strength.
Yeah.
But that's also something we don't need him to do anyways, right? Yeah. So it's kind of a futile point, but that's the only thing I could think of, really, like, because there aren't too many weaknesses of his. Yo, what's up, Shadow? You want to just give any thoughts on GP2? No structure or anything. Just, you want to spitball and just give your thoughts next season on GP?
Oh, well, GP2, a little gem. He is healthy now. He saw his doctor about a few times over the summer, and after the season, he had work to do. But sometime in late July, he started feeling like 100%. One of my boys, Malcolm, used to play with him on his college team, and yeah, he's from Toronto, so they speak very frequently. As far as GP2 is concerned, I kind of agree with Jim, but by the same token, like, this is one thing you can't be mad at Kerr for, just simply because it's buffoonery that he's playing the power forward position. But if you really look up and down at our roster, like, now that we have Sark, it's a different story, but we never had no power forward last year. You understand what I'm saying? Like, if Draymond doesn't play or Draymond sits, there's no backup power forward. So that was out of necessity. And in reality, he's very good at it. I don't know what happened in the second half of that game, but you remember when we were going at AD with GP2 in the pick and roll all day, every day, a.k.a. the Jim Park offense. And he was killing AD. And I think he had like 14 or 15 points. We were up by 15. And the second half comes and we just go away from it. So I think that's actually a mismatch, because most power forwards, one, aren't as explosive as he is. Two, don't have the bounce that he has. And on the other end, don't defend at the same level that he has. So even though there is this huge size differential, he makes up for it with his bounce, as well as his athletic ability, as well as his tenacious defense. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA, and when he gets into spots, he is mismatched, but he has that timing thing where he watches one dribble, two dribble, swipe, it's gone. He's gone down the court. So with that being said, I don't really see too much weaknesses. The health was a weakness, but I'm here to tell you guys, I heard probably like last week, Thursday, that he's 100% healthy, ready to go. He's been working out. He's lifting heavier than he's ever lifted. And he's back. So I'm feeling that.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That's
That's what we
beautiful.
want. That's what we expected of him. And I'm really excited that he's going to come back as a healthy version of himself. Uh, what's up, Burkle? I don't know if you're still here, but health concerns. 2 years ago, he played 71 games, and it's not because of anything other than he sat out some games because Kerr chose to sit him out some games. I don't think he was really injured to any extent in a really relevant manner up until the second round when he broke his elbow, which, by the way, most players wouldn't have come back from. But he came back in the finals. And if he didn't come back, man, I feel like that Celtics series would have been much harder. Might even have gone to a game 7. Who knows, right? So if he's healthy, if he's strong, I expect him to be that throughout the course of a regular season. As for all the games, the limited number of games that he's played over the course of his career, he just didn't get an opportunity. Teams didn't. He either wasn't on a team or they just didn't use him. Or they didn't know how to use him. Or maybe he needed to work on certain things. But even if he did need to work on certain things, I just feel like teams, maybe just the coaches just didn't understand how to maximize what he can be in the league. So yeah, just going back to some of the weaknesses that you were talking about, and just to also cover what Shadow was talking about, I mostly agree with all the things you said. I think the only thing about putting him at a power forward position or something like that is the rebounding. If he's at your power forward spot, it's tough to rebound because now you're more or less with 4 guards on the lineup, and that was obviously a huge problem. Rebounding was a huge issue. It was the primary reason Kuminga couldn't see any time on the floor. So that's such a big part of what the Warriors need to be able to do to be an elite defensive group. If you can't grab your rebound after playing great defense and allowing second chance opportunities, third chance opportunities, well, then your defense is no longer elite. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. And that's where my problem is with putting a guy like Gary Payton at power forward.
100% agree. Stay Cozy said, I think the emergence of Kuminga and the addition of Saric will kind of force him to play more of 2-3. I agree. And that's kind of his more natural position on the court, right? You don't really want him playing the 4, even though Steve kind of tinkered with that a bit. Saric is a floor spacing big. He can rebound decently well. Kuminga, hopefully he takes that step as well from a rebounding standpoint. And we know what he can do at 6'8" defensively. So it's going to be interesting to see, and the rim pressure he provides. But the beauty of it is the lineup versatility, right? Like, at the end of the day, the lineup versatility that we have and that GP2 adds to this team is something that was quite apparent the moment he was traded back to the Warriors and returned. So, we kind of lost some of that last year. We regained a little bit of it, and hopefully, obviously Shadow just dropped some gems, so he'll be healthy next year. And as our 7th, 8th, 9th man, however the chips fall in terms of that, I fully expect him to be one of our better players and somebody that's going to be well, let's get into expectations, actually. So, defensive stopper and a boost of energy. That's kind of actually what we highlighted in the strengths. Like, we kind of outlined that very descriptively, very extensively as to, what value he provides as from a defensive standpoint, as just a guy that can stop and shut down the opposing team's best perimeter player, as well as a boost of energy off the bench. Someone that can just change the momentum, change the tide of a game with a steal here, a deflection there, a leak out for an easy
Yep.
dunk,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And change the tide of it. And so we've seen that all in 2022. We saw flashes of it in 2023. But ultimately, if we can get, closer to the 2022 version of him back, I feel even better about our chances next season. And just kind of like a note, consistent role in minutes off the bench. I expect him to be a consistent rotation piece, consistent role, consistent minutes, 17 to 18-minute range like he did the last 2 seasons. I don't expect his minutes to fluctuate too much. I know Moses Moody is a guy that, their minutes kind of got log-jammed last year with Dante in the mix. This season, no Dante. You have Chris Paul at the helm from a shot creation standpoint, so Moody can play the 2, and GP2 can kind of play that 3 spot defensively. Now, obviously, you got Kuminga, right? So I would say him and GP2 and Kuminga might wrestle for some minutes and for some playing time, but you can kind of divide it up between the two based on matchup or based on just how they were playing at the time and kind of ride that wave. But what do you guys thought on that, actually? Let me ask you about Kuminga and GP2. Like, how do you see that kind of tug of war playing out?
I think Kuminga should play with GP2 when he goes to when he plays at his natural position. He's really technically a wing, playing the three, but Steve Kerr likes to play him at power forward, and I kind of have the same feel as Jim on this one. I believe he could play power forward on the offensive end, but on the defensive end, it's not good for him to be playing power forward. Um, because just from a defensive standpoint, it's sometimes difficult because he doesn't play a lot of perimeter and he hasn't. The ironic thing is, I told you my one of my young boys, Malcolm. His name is Malcolm DeVivier. He used to go to Oregon State with GP2, and they used to play together. And he used to play the two guard. The crazy thing is, I don't know if a lot of people know this. Gary Payton played point guard in college. He was actually a point guard. So I would like to see
That is true. That is true. Yep.
I would like to see Kerr use him more on the play. It's not like his handle is broken or nothing like that. It's not the fanciest thing in the world. He protects the ball. He knows how to protect the ball. His father was a point guard, so he came up trying to mirror everything that his father did. I believe that he should get some minutes at point guard. That's just me, my personal
Not this year,
opinion.
Shadow. Shadow, not this year. You got CP on the team.
No,
This
no, no,
year.
no. But I'm just saying. I'm just saying the games he doesn't. The games CP is definitely gonna miss like 25 games.
Hey,
I don't
Shadow,
think.
You got Corey
Yeah,
Joseph.
Shadow. He's actually not like a bad player. Like when we talk about like the connective stuff. When he sets that screen for Steph and you ask him to make a good decision, more times than not, he's probably making a good
I
decision.
think to be honest, if you guys even pull up film on it, I don't know if you could.
I wouldn't want him
No,
to run the offense, but like
I would
if he's
think
a
you
Shadow,
should
Shadow.
connector,
I
you
actually
guys should
wrote that.
watch film like
Go ahead.
when GP2 has the ball and he passes, people are usually wide open.
Shadow. That
Yeah.
was actually one of the so I wrote because my strengths. This was the first player I actually had 2 slides for strengths, and literally one of my bullets was he's an underrated connective passer. That's exactly what I wrote.
Brother,
Yep.
like
Yep.
I'm telling you guys, like I've watched because Malcolm is literally again like one of my little crows, like one of my little brothers. So I watched every single game in college. I did not miss an Oregon State. I actually went to like 4 or 5 games in 2016, the year Malcolm and GP2 were playing together. And I'm telling you, like his awareness, like some people have it, they're forcing it, and then some people have the natural ability to see the floor, and GP2 has that. It's just sometimes Kerr suppresses it.
Everybody.
And we have a lot of passers on our team. Like again, we want Moody to shoot, we want Moody to do all these things, but Moody played point guard as well at Arkansas. So I think if like it may sound crazy, but it was super crazy when they first said, "Oh, Draymond Green run the offense." That was pretty crazy when he did it, and I don't think Draymond Green is the greatest passer in the world. He just has done it enough, whereas it makes sense and it keeps Steph off the ball and be able to create movement and gravity and all those things. And I think the same things can happen with GP2. Like, there's nothing wrong with a lineup with Steph, GP2, Kaminga, Saric, Looney on a second unit, and then just CP comes in to replace whomever, like whether it be Steph, whether it be whatever. And I think GP2 needs to do more guard-like things because I think that's an actual mismatch for other teams because most guards aren't as explosive as GP2, like outside of like a John Morant or Edwards or something like that. But there's not too many of guys that could do the things that GP2 could do offensively. But like we saw him literally expose Anthony Davis in one game when they spammed the pick and roll, and then Kerr just I don't know how to brain fart and decided not to go to it. He said Clay needs shots, and then Clay started shooting like crazy. We know how all that end. We'd end up losing the game, but I just want to see more connective passing from GP2. I think it'll work.
Oh yeah, as a secondary playmaker, he can absolutely do some of those things.
Yeah, no, that's something that stuck out to me, and I'm glad we're kind of marinating in this point because it's something that I've always kept in my back pocket. Is like when we talk about GP2, we talk about the elite defense, we talk about his ability to cut off the ball and do some extra stuff, defensively, whether it be deflections or rebounding and closing possessions. But his ability to pass connectively, I feel like is very underrated because when he's when Steph sets or when he sets a screen or when Draymond sets a screen and the defensive side of the court they trap it and we're in an advantage situation,
Yeah.
GP more times than not makes the right decision. He makes the right read, whether it be to score, whether it be to pass to the
Do you
corner.
know? Do you know?
Yeah,
To that point, do you know how you know that he's elite at that? Because there's only a few guys like Zaza would do it. Like in the split action, rather than fade, they would actually set the screen and they would pass underneath their legs or they do a roundabout and Steph would always hit the three. Steph felt more comfortable, the most comfortable when he did it with
Bogut.
Bogut, Zaza, and GP2. Those three in the whole run,
wow.
he feels the most comfortable and hits the most shots because GP2 is an excellent screen setter. We could see because of the pick and roll, we saw that he was setting screens and diving like crazy
No fucking other.
in that game. It was crazy, man. Like I just can't believe like Kerr just like we had that game, man. Oh, I'm just like
I know
irritated
that
right now.
game lives in my
Yeah,
head right
like if you guys pull up the first half of that game, the connective passing and what I'm speaking about specifically with setting screens, connective passing, and like in the split action and diving, like those things. I think that if GP2 got that opportunity, it'd be fabulous. Like imagine him setting screens for CP3 and then Steph fading in and Clay and Steph
now. Yeah,
um and or Clay or Steph. I wouldn't have both of them on there because that'd be too many guards. But
right.
like a Saric or a Steph, like it's oh
You
my,
know, you make a
it
good
looks
point.
so
Like
dominant. Like
let's
I don't know if you
brainstorm.
could find that game, bro, but it literally looks so dominant. It was
We
crazy.
can brainstorm some I like that lineup. So you could do like a CP3 Steph backcourt. Then you have GP at the 3, and then you go like Saric and Draymond. And then like if Draymond's playing to the point where he's like rebounding well and like that could be a legit closing lineup, by the way. I don't think Steve would play that to close games, but like you could do that because now I don't think he would bench Clay or Wiggins, but that is a formidable lineup on both ends. If you have Steph, CP backcourt, right? You got the playmaking, you got the shooting, you got GP as like this like Swiss Army knife guy. Like he can rebound, he can pass connectively, he can cut to the rim, he can play in transition, he can defend elite, offensive players on the perimeter. And then you got Saric, who's a floor spacing big, who can pass and rebound well. And then Draymond, who hopefully, if he can rebound like at a high level, that he can kind of make that work and defensively fly out, contest shots, close out on shooters. But like, there is so much more lineup versatility and combinations we can go to this year with GP2 being available in a more not only healthy capacity, but now we have him to start the season. Last season we had to integrate him, kind of towards the end of the year. So, yeah, I mean, Jim, what are your kind of thoughts on that as well? If you want to expand on that.
Well, if we want to talk about an expansion of role in some way for GP2, I think one of the most important things that Kerr has to enable and empower him to do is to shoot with confidence when he's open. If you're going to run some lineups like this where some of the guys like, I mean, Kuminga's gotten better at shooting the three, but he's not exactly known as a three. He's not some guy that the other team feels threatened by. They're content with letting him shoot, right? So it, it would just diversify the offense that much more if Gary was empowered to do that. while he's on the floor with a guy like CP, because CP can run pick and roll with anybody. He can run it with GP2. He can run it with Kuminga. He can run it with Saric. He can run it with Davis. And we'll see, what Davis's role would be for this Warriors team, because to me he's like the backup power forward right now. Saric might be a stretch five, like a Bielitsa type, So yeah, I would say give more freedom for guys to be able to shoot with confidence. I mean, same thing goes to Draymond, right? He's talked about that this offseason, how he's lost confidence in his shot. Gee, I wonder why. So he thinks that, because when KD came along, like there's just so many guys that were looking to score, and I needed to pass the ball, and along the way I lost my confidence. Last I checked, he lost his confidence the year before that, the OKC game. Don't forget that. He was shooting 41% to that point, and then it dropped by like 3-4% after Kerr came back. It's not a coincidence.
100%. I guess like the last bullet point I wrote was he's going to be a key playoff contributor, and we can kind of go through the history of what he's done in the playoffs. So, I mean, I expect him to be in the 8-man rotation, right? And if we were to list it out, right, it'd be Steph, Clay, Wiggs, Draymond, Loon, that's 5. You got CP, that's 6. And then you have Saric and GP2, I would say, are the comfortable 8 right now. Now, you got Moody and Kuminga in the mix, but I think the comfortable 8 are the first 8 I listed, with CP3, Saric, and GP2 off the bench. And so I think he's in the comfortable 7 to 8 man rotation. And part of why I'm so confident in putting him there is because we saw it in 2022. He changed that Denver series around. Like that game 5, what he was able to do, like you said, Jim, just hitting big shots, making big plays in the closing moments. We saw against Memphis. I know he got hurt in game 2 with his elbow, but that game 1, he was a huge part of why we won. Like we won that game by I think 1 point, and he was a huge reason why. Like defending Ja, just being as a slasher, just cutting at the right moments, making the right reads defensively. He was just incredible in that Memphis series, even the short time he played in one game. So he really helped us win that. And then coming back in the finals, he completely shifted momentum. Game 2, he comes in, first game back from the elbow fracture, and he hits a 3 right away. And then he gets to the free throw line, right away. And then he's making these big plays in transition. Next thing you know, we blow Boston out. Fast forward to game 5. He has 15 points and 5 rebounds off the bench. So he was instrumental in beating Boston in a crucial game 5 that put us over the top 3-2 at home. Because, Clay shot the ball well, Wiggins played well, but Steph actually really struggled shooting the ball. So GP2 kind of made up with that, hitting, finishing at the rim in transition. I think he hit 1 3, I think 1 or 2 threes. So he was really big time in the finals, and that's like the biggest stage there is. Fast forward to last season in the playoffs, right, against Sacramento.
Yep.
He was a little bit up and down, but
Dre, can I also
of
interject?
course, yeah.
He started game 1 in Memphis. We forget. I remember that to a T.
Yep.
Like he started
did.
game 1 in Memphis too.
Right,
as well.
right.
Yeah. So
100%, exactly. No, yeah, he started game 1.
because remember they wanted him to start off on Ja. It was like their Kerr's little rabbit in the hat. He's like, yo, we're gonna get him on Ja. And we ended up winning that game by 1 point.
That's exactly.
Oh, please. It was probably Mike Brown, let's be real.
That's what I was kind of referring to.
Okay, Jim. Okay. Man.
No, but Shadow, that's exactly like what I was referring to. Is like we won that game by 1 point, but GP2 was so instrumental in putting together on both ends a level of impact that put us over the top, right? So you're exactly right. He started that game, and so yeah, I mean, and then we fast forward to the finals. Like I said, he was probably a top 6 or 7 player in the finals, like probably top 7, right? And I mean, that's major rotation piece right there, right? Like Jim said, key piece, that a championship piece that we lost. And then last year we kind of revisit that in the King series, and he was a little bit up and down, but he had some good moments on Fox. He played pretty well at times, but it was a little bit of a difficult matchup because the Kings were such a high-powered offense. Against the Lakers, he was dominant. Like that game 4, he was a force. And that game 5, he was also a force.
I would say
So,
Gary Payton's more like a top 4 player in the finals, honestly.
oh wow,
Because I
okay,
mean,
okay.
okay, was he better than Clay in that series?
Production wise, no, but I get like I know what you mean by from in terms of being
Impact,
effective.
overall impact.
Overall impact, yeah, you could say that. I
It's
mean,
tough because
yeah,
obviously Clay provides a steady diet of scoring, right? So obviously that's important. But the guy shot 35% from the field doing it, 35% from threes, 17 points, 17 shots, 17 points on 17 shots. Not exactly the most efficient, play by him. Obviously, Game 6 really hurt his, his shooting percentages. But he also shot 4-19 in Game 2. So, it's not,
right.
it's not like he was
Yeah,
all
GP
around
two,
efficient.
GP two is really valuable. And Dre, Jim, you're making excellent points. I really hope he's in that eight-man rotation. I again back to the Memphis game. He had 7 rebounds in that game.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I remember because I bet on him. I think his rebound margin was like 2.5, and I ended up betting, and it was like after like the second quarter, he cashed. Like he had 7 rebounds. I believe he had like 8 and 7. He was like 4 for 5 or 4 for 6. Like he played great defense. He slowed down Ja. He was on Bane, like not Bane, because Bane didn't even come in. Who's the smart Tyus Jones? Yeah, he was a pest out there, man. Like
And by the way,
and we
Shadow,
need him.
like I mentioned against the Lakers last year, I said in games 4 and 5. In game 4, he had 15 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and was a +3. We lost that game by 3, by the way. So that's
Yeah, and I think he had 15 of those 15 in the first half, and then
damn near. I mean,
Kerr glued him, and
in
then
that
Kerr
third
glued
quarter
him.
too. Yeah, that third quarter
Yeah, and then
he
Kerr
got out.
glued him. Like
Yep, yep.
it's
And then
just boneheaded.
game 5 at the game after that, we beat them. We blew them out. He had 13 points, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal on 80%.
Yeah, him and Wiggins were
Dre.
killing that game. They were killing. They were
Oh,
murdering.
I
And
keep
then
saying
he was a +25, by the way, in that game 5. Yeah.
oh, Draymond had to be benched in the freaking finals. He was so bad, like Steph had to save him from the crowd because he was like nervous or something. Like he
Dr.
wasn't
MBA,
even himself.
what were you going to say, Dr. MBA?
no. I was just gonna say. I think obviously he was in game 4 at the end, or not in due to offense. But I think that if he had played and was guarding Lonnie Walker, we would have won that game if
That's a
GP2
fair
was in.
that's a fair assessment. And by the way, in the finals, just to read off, so in the finals, he averaged 7 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals on 59% from the field. He was a +35 on the series. And like I said, in game 5, I said he hit 2 threes. Well, he ended up only hitting 1, but he did have 15 points and 5 rebounds, like I said. And he also had 3 steals. In that game 6, he had 6 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, 1 block. So you see, and the last 2 games of the finals, GP2 was a +16 and a +18. So he's a +34 in the final 2 games with a combined 21 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 6 steals, 1 block. And he shot the ball pretty well overall. 8 for 14, which is about 57%. 1 for 5 from 3. Again, he didn't shoot the 3 ball too well, but again, that's not his major value. And he hit 1 in game 5. So,
Damn.
we're just, I mean, we kind of just listed out his major playoff performances, and I expect that to continue this year. He's what, 31 years old?
He's gonna turn 31 after December.
Okay. Yeah, so he's still in his, prime. I know he's dealt with some physical injuries and health concerns over the years, but I expect with Rick Celebrini in a full off season, he should be good for the playoffs, and I'm excited, man. I'm pretty excited because he's really good, man. Very few teams have a player as good as GP2 off their bench. Very few teams have a guy like this. Now, Denver kind of, you could argue, Bruce Brown was kind of their version of GP2, and they lost him. He got paid a bag, right? So, and the only other team I could kind of think of is maybe the Clippers with Terrence Mann. But he doesn't defend to the level GP2 does, even though he may be a little bit better offensively. But yeah, there aren't too many guys like this in the NBA. There really aren't. And then last but not least, and Jim, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. So after every player profile, I do my own kind of player projection, and I kind of give my projected stats for that year. So I had him at around 17 minutes per game, 6 points, about 3.5 rebounds, an assist, about a steal, on 61, 36, 65 splits. What are your thoughts? Do you think more minutes, less minutes, better production, better efficiency, worse? What are your thoughts on like this projection that I made?
I think if Kerr gives him the confidence to shoot, I think he could approach 40% from the 3-point line. He literally shot 50%. I'm telling you, 22 games last year, 50% from 3-point line. I think it's okay to give him, a couple more shots, see what he can do over the stretch of an entire season. And obviously, field goal wise, he's up there. So I agree there. But I think in terms of minutes played, we're not talking about, he played like 17 minutes 2 years ago for the Warriors wasn't he a two-way player then?
He was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, think about it now. He's getting paid $8-9 million. So the team is paying him. So I think Steve has a tendency to try to play guys that are getting paid. And Gary's getting paid. And I think if he gets like 22 minutes, he would easily be up there to be a defensive year of the year candidate. Like that's how good his defense is.
I agree.
Wow. I
agree.
So I think 17 minutes is pretty low for a guy that's getting paid $9-10 million.
It's what's crazy, Jim? He's actually played around 17 minutes the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And so like kind of the way I thought about it was, okay, well, Kuminga's gonna get some run. Saric is gonna play, in that front court. Moody's gonna get some time as the shooting guard. So GP's gonna be playing, but I don't and maybe if one of Kuminga or Moody weren't on the roster, I would say closer to 20, 21 minutes. But because there's like Steve has to kind of fit all these guys, GP2 might suffer a little bit in terms of his minutes. But I think in the playoffs, we're going to see him closer to 20 minutes.
I hate to say this for Moody because I like him. I've liked him since his rookie year. Yeah. But somebody has to lose minutes. It is what it is. Yeah, and I feel like Moody is that guy. He's going to get screwed over again.
I think one of the reasons for the logjam too, especially last year, was because we had both GP2 and Dante.
Right.
So playing Kuminga would have been difficult given those two individuals. But now that Dante's gone, I think that both JK and GP2 can have a more distinct and consistent role. And I think they can play with each other because I think they both offer different skill sets.
100% agree. 100% agree. Okay, well, I guess I can close today's player projection, player profile out right now. Also, tomorrow we're doing Kevon Looney. So shout out to Loon Muse. He'll be there for that tomorrow, and we're gonna do Kevon Looney, and we're gonna kind of break Loon down for next year. But Jim, I appreciate you so much for just helping add so much value to the conversation and providing your insights and thoughts to GP. And this was really informative, I thought, because again, we kind of know GP pretty well as a fan base, but getting into the nitty gritty and the nuts and bolts of it is, this is the nuance that we need, right? Just referencing, prior performances and providing extra descriptors and descriptions and just kind of layers to the analysis. So I appreciate you, Jim.
Yeah, happy to be here. And you know me, I'm very harsh when it comes to grading players. I'm not easy on grading players. You have to really be special for me to call you a cheat code. As a matter of fact, cheat code is a word that I reserved only for Steph. So for me to use that word, you got to be that good for me to praise you that much. So yeah, Gary Payton is a really fun player to discuss, a really fun player to have on the team. And yeah, it's been fun.